Jim Henson was one of the most remarkable and beloved artists of the 20th century, and while the term visionary is thrown around easily, I think it absolutely applies to him. He saw puppetry as a medium with endless potential. While he's perhaps most famous for his family-friendly Muppets and Sesame Street, he saw a world where audiences of all ages could enjoy the craft of puppetry. His early work in commercials definitely has a darker edge.
Any last request, like for a cup of Wilkins coffee? No. You don't drink Wilkins? No. How shocking.
And, in 1982, he collaborated with Frank Oz and David Odell to create The Dark Crystal. So apparently I saw this as a kid, but I don't remember it very well. So I'm approaching it with a more adult viewpoint. And I'll be upfront here, I love this franchise. But to explain why, I'll start with the film and the one weakness I think it does have. The Dark Crystal, on paper, can seem a bit bland. Bear with me for a moment as I just tell you the plots before showing you the movie. The world is in trouble, ruled by the evil Skeksis. But there is a prophecy, a verbatim line from the movie, that involves Jen, who is the chosen one. Again, verbatim from the movie. He's a Gelfling who lives with the good mystics, sheltered away from the Skeksis. When his mentor dies, he has to find a MacGuffin called the Crystal Shard to save the world from an eternity under Skeksis' rule. He meets a love interest, sneaks into the villain's castle, saves the day, the hero's journey in a nutshell. It's not a bad story, I would argue, but it is very tropey. And in the hands of a lesser director, it would have been very forgettable. But this is not the hands of a lesser director. I sketched out the plot the way I did for a reason, because while on paper, or through my drawing, it might not be super impressive. But take a look at the presentation.
Another world, another time, in the age of wonder.
Right from the beginning, this movie is a visual marvel, and the most important ingredient in the look is the sheer craft on display. Look at the puppets for the Skeksis. Look at them! You can see them breathing! That is incredible attention to detail. And then you look at the mystics. That's amazing! You see Jen, and the way he moves, and the way he blinks. And then there's Aughra, the mysterious figure that Jen meets to help get his journey underway, and also the best character in the movie.
You want a shard? Here.
Which one is it?
Don't know.
This is clearly a production team that's at the top of their game. And the craft is so convincing that it almost melts away. As Jen goes on his adventure, it feels like he's in a living world, filled with fantastical creatures of every kind. We don't see puppets. You see a dying clan mourning the loss of their leader. We don't see puppets. We see court intrigue unfolding before our eyes. It's really a combination of two skills. Incredible design to make memorable creatures, and incredible performance to make them feel real. And I haven't even talked about the sets yet. The Palace of the Crystal is a dark cave of opulence and excess. Aughra's orrery is stunning to behold, and all along the path, Jen and Kira, a second Gelfling that he meets, find new places in this world. And that leads me to my next point. This movie has so much atmosphere, and I love it. Some of my favorite parts are where nothing is happening, and we can just kind of relax. You got this little fuzzball named Fizzgig, who is currently my Netflix avatar, and a village of podlings that Jen and Kira take refuge in. It may seem a small thing, but I really appreciate that the podlings don't speak English. And it's not translated for us, at least not completely. Because it's not about what they actually say, but it's about the emotion that they make us feel, which should always be a filmmaker's first priority. But while some moments are comforting and warm, other moments are like this. In true 1980s family film style, The Dark Crystal isn't afraid to scare the absolute shit out of its audience. And I kinda love it for that. It makes the Skeksis genuinely feel threatening. It's one thing to say the Skeksis are evil. It's another thing to feel the disgusting decadence of their dinner, showing how they wallow in their excess. And it's yet another thing to watch them send their Garthim soldiers to raid the Podling village, kidnap the inhabitants, drain their essence, thus brainwashing them into slavery, and then drinking that essence to keep themselves young. I'm starting to see why I didn't remember this. Little me probably repressed that memory. But at the same time, the Dark Crystal doesn't wallow in that dark tone either. There's a point where the Garthim raid Agra's house and seize her. Then when she's brought in front of the Skeksis...
Where is he?
Gone! Gelfling gone! Stupid Garthim!
See what I mean? Best character in the movie. The film never edges into a grimdark kind of territory, because there's always some peaceful serenity, or joy, or wonder and awe in a little bit to help alleviate it. That way you never become desensitized, and you stay invested in the world. Oh yeah, the world! The Dark Crystal's world building is really good. In fact, it feels written to world build. Take this scene. The Emperor has just died, and the Skeksis are scheming over who will take up his scepter. Then the Chamberlain makes a move.
Chamberlain! Lay down that scepter! Ah! I tell it!
Trial by stone.
Trial by stone!
Podling slaves bring in the stone, and the Chamberlain and General take turns swinging at it, until finally...
Me, the Emperor!
Now notice the minimal dialogue in this scene. He didn't have a Skeksis standing up saying, now because the General challenged you, Chamberlain, you are allowed to pick what kind of trial you will both take part in. In a trial by stone, you will need to hit the stone until it breaks, and that person becomes Emperor. That's holding the audience's hand, and the Dark Crystal doesn't want to do that. It's content to let us explore the world on our own terms, to take in as much or as little as we want. With the different races and species we meet, and all the places that we discover, the Dark Crystal builds a realm that captures the imagination. Even if our main character does have a case of protagonist syndrome, the world around him is so compelling that I get invested anyways. I have a feeling that when Jim Henson made this, the story was merely a vehicle to show off the craft, and this movie does it so beautifully. That's what's so magical about The Dark Crystal, the film. When the film released in 1982, it grossed a little over $41 million on a $25 million budget. It was profitable, but not overly so. Over the years, the franchise still grew with books and comics. Yet The Dark Crystal did not return to the screen, with a sequel languishing in development hell for over a decade before it finally petered out. Then, 2017, a prequel series was announced. The Jim Henson Company collaborating with Netflix to bring us back to this fantastical world. But was it as good as the original movie? Well, it's even better. Everything I liked about the movie is here, and improved tenfold. The choice to continue relying on puppetry keeps the unique aesthetic intact, while modern digital effects are integrated to allow for quicker movements and action when need be. I'd estimate it's about 90% puppetry, but there are times where it's genuinely hard to distinguish the two, so great work both puppeteers and digital artists. The show steeps itself in ambiance again, showing off the great craftsmanship while also eliciting the same sense of wonder, joy, and horror that the film gave us. And speaking of horror, I imagine there must have been some pressure to make it more family-friendly to fit into the 2010s. But if anything, they only upped the ante. The greatest part though, the one element I did have a problem with in the movie. The series follows three protagonists, Rian, Brea, and Deet, who all unwittingly get entangled in the mysteries of the Skeksis. All three of these characters are great. They have compelling goals that drive them forward and make the whole story come alive. The supporting characters are even better. Hup is a podling paladin armed with only a spoon, and he is the greatest hero ever conceived in any piece of fiction to have ever existed, ever. I will not be taking questions or comments on that. There are more conflicted and morally gray characters, but you can understand where their motivations come from when they make a bad decision. That's great writing. The world feels even more expansive, with so many peoples and so many cultures and so many different lands. In my mind, it feels as big as something as Middle-earth even. They really interrogate the mythology of the Dark Crystal and explore exciting concepts and what-ifs. It feels like around any corner, there could be something incredible to discover, and I love that feeling. One of my favorite things they did with the world building, though, was that they made the Skeksis competent rulers. Hell, even popular rulers. A lot of these kinds of stories don't really pay attention to how politics works, and just have evil rulers who are practically begging to be overthrown. Like, how did these guys even last this long? Here, you can see exactly how the Skeksis were able to hold on to power. Through manipulation and political intrigue, yes, but also because life for the vast majority of people was genuinely fine under the rule for a long time. It's only when the Skeksis find a new source of living essence and start to harvest the Gelflings that this obviously sparks concern and unrest. We see how the Gelfling governed themselves, how there were differences and prejudices between the clans, between them and other races, and realistic prejudices too. It's not a simple, I'm going to actively hate you because you're different dynamic, but more subtle than that.
At last we arrive at today's opportunity for service. The filthy Podling village.
It makes the Gelflings seem more human, that they have their own shortcomings as a society that they need to overcome. And all of this, everything I just described, makes for a compelling setting with compelling people that's so easy to emotionally invest in. Now, of course, it's not a perfect show. The dialogue can be a bit wordy. That is, characters sometimes say things in more words than is needed. Plus, they'll do that prequel thing, where they emphasize things that the audience recognizes, but don't have the same kind of impact within the world of the show.
I felt it draw forth my life force, my very essence.
And while the camera movement is very dynamic, it's sometimes overly dynamic. Like this. It's swinging around all over the place. I realize it's meant to have an exciting effect, but it feels like too much at times. Honestly though, those are minor issues, because for every line that's weak, there are 5 lines that are great. For every shot that's messy, there are 10 that are beautiful. And the series does something that's so rare for prequels. It actually improves the original film in retrospect. Because once you know everything it took to get here, it feels like even more of an epic journey. I can't stress enough how proud everyone involved in the production of the series should be with themselves. And while Season 2 was confirmed to not be happening, I'm honestly still satisfied with what we got. There's a pretty straight line to be drawn between the two stories. No real cliffhangers or anything we can't reasonably assume ourselves. And there will be other projects in the future other than a second season, and I'm excited to see those. So by all means, if you haven't, give The Dark Crystal the film and The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance a watch. and discover Jim Henson's fantastical world for yourself.